Hey, I'm Pete Holman with PH1Performance.com, and I hope you enjoy listening to the SME Stories podcast.
You are now listening to the next great small business podcast. Welcome to the SME Stories podcast, where it is all about small businesses in Canada. And here's your host, Ken Alfred.
Hey everybody, thanks for downloading the show. We got a great episode today with Pete Holman. Now, Pete Holman is the owner of GolfForever. We're going to go into that product a little bit later on, but just a little bit of background about Pete. Pete is a physical therapist, certified strength and conditioning specialist, former United States national taekwondo champion, and team captain at fitness product inventor, including the TRX Rip Trainer, the Nautilus Glute Drive, and the GolfForever Swing Trainer. He is now a lead trainer, content provider, consultant, and subject matter expert for GolfForever, and enjoys traveling the world educating the golf community in the importance of physical fitness for performance, durability, and longevity. So I actually met Pete through the Canadian Fitness trade show that happened back in, I believe, late August, early September. So I got to talking to Pete. I thought he had a great story, and that's where we are today. So yeah, that's how we met, and I think you're going to have a great time on this episode. So sit back and absorb. Let's talk about the actual industry itself. Now, we kind of jumped all over the place, and you probably answered some of these questions already. But like, in your opinion, what is the current direction of the fitness equipment industry, and where do you think it's going?
Yeah, it's such a loaded question, right? The fitness industry, it's a juxtaposition, right? Part of me is so happy and excited. Part of me is saddened, and part of me is also encouraged, right? What I'm happy about is that fitness is buzzing. I mean, you go down to your corner strip mall or wherever, there's always a Pilates studio, a yoga studio, a chain gym, a Good Life Fitness, some kind of mom and pop shop, a sports performance center. People are starting, especially after COVID, when we realize that your personal health is two things. Number one, it's imperative for your overall wellness and vitality. If you're sick, by the way, I trained people in Aspen, Colorado for years. And if you're not familiar with Aspen, it's kind of like the ski resort in America, if not the world. And so all these billionaires come on. It's kind of funny, on the 4th of July and Christmas, you drive by the airport, which is right off of the main drag, and it literally looks like a parking lot of Gulfstream airplanes. I mean, there's over 100 Gulf G5, these are all $40 million planes, and they're lined up like at the parking lot. So, but the point is, it doesn't matter how much money you have. If you don't have your health, you got nothing. So COVID really taught us that. And so I think it's done a great job as far as us responding, and the fitness industry really is blown up. And you look at in-home exercise, consumer fitness. If you look at even back to the physical, plants and the physical shops that have, live classes and live personal training, they're back bustling and thriving after COVID. And so that's very encouraging. Some of the discouraging stuff to me is, some of the social media, there's just a lot of confusion out there. There's a lot of so-called influencers that have a huge platform. Maybe they have a great physiques. They're very attractive. Maybe they've got a certain spiel that they promote, and they're not always experts. In fact, a lot of these folks have never trained 10 people in their life. So somebody like myself, who's trained hundreds of people, who's rehabbed in physical therapy hundreds of people, you start to understand how to communicate to others, what people need, how to direct them. And you talk in generalities, right? Everybody's a specific case, but there's a lot of charlatans out there that say it's my way or the highway, and you got to be doing this and you got to be doing that. And I think that can be misleading. So that's unfortunate. I think the biggest thing that we're missing in the industry right now is that most of the industry focuses on 5 to 10% of the population. In other words, there's all these specialties. Oh, what kind of diet should it be? Should it be macro? Should it be keto? Should it be, Mediterranean diet? Should it be plant-based? And very specific.
HIIT training or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you get to the strength and conditioning, is it HIIT training? Is it long, slow cardio? Is it metabolic conditioning? Are you working on strength training, foundational movement patterns like deadlifts and squats and overhead pressing? And it's all over the map. 90% of the people, Ken, we're just trying to get them off the couch,
Yeah.
literally. Could you walk for 10 minutes after your meal and just take a stroll around the block, get some fresh air, maybe correct your posture, stretch out your legs. That's where we almost need to start with people. So it's almost more of a motivational, psychological play where I think the fitness industry is hopefully heading, but they're missing the boat on that. Instead of getting into all these specific, hardcore workout programs, which, to be honest, you could take 8 out of 10 of these programs and put any healthy person on them, and they're going to have great results, right? As long as they don't get injured. And it's the other 90%. How do we get them off the couches and just start moving again?
Well, yeah, like I said, I used to be a trainer back in the day myself. Like I trained for over 20 plus years, and trained lots of clients as well. So like I can totally relate to what Pete's talking about, right? Because when people look at, remember that show, The Biggest Loser, when that used to be on TV? And some clients said, wow, can we do something like that? I'm like, no, we're not going to do that, because
it's Hollywood, man.
It's not going to look pretty. It's not going to be very exciting with some of the stuff I'm having you do, right? So if the workouts we do will definitely work, but it's not TV ready, and I'm not going to be Jillian Michaels yelling at your ear to say that you're going to die in the next couple of months if you don't lose all this weight. That's not my style,
right?
And
right.
I think you brought up a good point that majority of the cases, like you said, some of these programs or diets, they might work for like they're targeting that 5 to 10% of, let's say, of the highly motivated person already, right? So which is great, but I think we need to make sure we kind of go to the masses for some of those. Now, if you want to have a product or a service that specifically targets that particular niche of the 5 to 10%, absolutely. Charge a premium, even better. But if you're trying to get to the majority of the people, like you said, get them off their couch, getting them, start eating right even a little bit is probably a good start. But I think I can definitely hear that. So let me ask you this then. So what has been your biggest failure, but also your biggest success so far?
How much time you got on failures? I mean, I've had so many failures in my life. One of my biggest failures, and it's not industry specific, it was, believe it or not, my senior year of high school. Senior year, I'm not sure exactly how your academic system works in Canada, but in the States, we have, like your high school, which is 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And your last 12th grade is your senior year. And then a lot of people go to college, or they go to a trade school, or maybe they just go and work, become an entrepreneur. But so my senior year of high school, it's a big year, right? You're the big man on campus. You want to be a stud. You want to be dating all the cute girls. Do you want to, be rolling with your grades and all that? And I had just had a terrible year. My junior year, I was kind of drinking and drugging and just off course. In my senior year, I finally got it together and I started training. So first time in my life, I was doing strength and conditioning. And I did it all summer, and I was getting stronger and I was getting faster. I was very late developing in high school, but I was coming into it. And the last season, the last sport is baseball. It's played in the spring, right before you graduate. And I love baseball. I wasn't as good at it as I became at martial arts, but I still love baseball. And I tried out for the team. There was only 3 guys that got cut from the team. And guess who was one of the 3?
Oh.
And it was the most dejecting, humiliating experience. My mom had just bought me. I told her, Mom, I need these new cleats, these Converse cleats with the interchangeable spikes, so if it's muddy, you can have one spike. If it's dry, you can have a different spike or a different cleat. And they were, shiny new shoes. I go to tryouts. I actually did really well. I was crushing the ball in batting practice. And I don't know, for some reason, I did not get chosen for the team. And it was one of the hardest times of my life. So here I am, instead of playing baseball, everybody knew I didn't make the team, didn't make the cut. And I had to sit there for the next 3 months of school and not play a sport. And that was the end of my athletic career. So I thought. And then I found the year after high school, I started training in martial arts at a health club I was working out at. And man, my fuel and my passion for being the best was like elevated to such a level I couldn't get the bitter taste of getting cut out of my mouth. And so if the coach told me to stretch for 20 minutes, I stretched for 40 minutes. If the coach told me to train for an hour and a half doing these kicks, I trained for 2.5 hours. I mean, and the next thing you know, 3 years later, I was on the U.S. national taekwondo team. 5 years later, I was the team captain at the world championships in St. Petersburg, Russia. And I mean, I was, one of the best in the nation at martial arts in a very short period of time. And that built that. So getting cut from baseball fueled me to become, one of the best martial artists in the state and be able to travel all over the world. And that has really helped my professional career because, being a captain of a U.S. national taekwondo team, it gives you certainly a certain cachet, but it also internally helps develop your character and it forces you to become a leader. Even when you're, in your mid-20s, you don't feel like you're that seasoned. You don't feel like you have that leadership quality, but you got to become a leader. And that has fueled me for the rest of my career.
Wow. That's pretty cool, actually. So basically, people don't mess with Pete. That's pretty much that you get in the nutshell.
Yeah, that was, by the way, that was many moons ago, man. I couldn't fight my way out of a wet paper bag at this point. But, it's all smoke and mirrors. I just try to keep it looking good, and we'll go from there.
And for those audio listeners, he is wearing a Bruce Lee shirt with the UFC logo on it. One of my favorite martial artists is Bruce Lee. Who doesn't love that?
100%.
We'll talk about that in a second.
Hey, do you need an error-free website? Do you need transcription that's accurate and on time? Would you like to remove noise from your video or audio recording? Do you need a spokesperson for your business? If so, we can help. At Northway Capital Group, we are happy to announce that we are now providing website testing services, audio transcriptions, and audio cleanup, as well as spokesperson services. We would love to help you on your next project. Contact us for more information at northwaycapitalgroup@gmail.com.
Now it's time for tips from the pro.
As well, but let's get to our tips from the pro segment. So now these are very specific to, fitness equipment, the marketplace of trying to get in. So I guess the first question that an aspiring entrepreneur wants to maybe replicate or follow in your footsteps: should I create one product or should I create a couple of products at a time? Because but backtrack, how do you even find inspiration to figure out what product to even come up with?
Yeah, so that's the better question, Ken. So my inspiration, well, first of all, you have to be curious. I'm reading this book called The Art of the Impossible. It's written by Stephen Kotler, who is a flow state expert. And for those of you that maybe aren't into athletics, flow state is this state of mind that a high-level athlete gets into, in which kind of time slows down, the noise dissipates, and you're just you're performing your best and you're feeling your best. That's what flow state is. It's very hard to get into. Most athletes, it only happens here or there. So if you watch a certain hockey player, your favorite player, this guy from Edmonton, McDaniels, is that his name? Anyhow,
Connor McDavid.
McDavid, thank you. This guy, he finds flow, and I mean literally on the skates. So that's flow state. But in order to have flow state, which is important for business too, right? Richard Branson, Tony Robbins, all these top business entrepreneurs, they get in the flow state. You got to have curiosity. You got to have passion. You got to have purpose. You got to have autonomy. And then you have to have mastery. So that's kind of where I would start is, developing your character traits that help build a successful entrepreneur. You got to be curious. For me, I get curious. I kind of get pissed off. I'm in the gym. I'm doing a certain piece of equipment and I'm like, why is this designed like this? This is not functional. I just pinched my hand in between the adjustment mechanism. This should be redesigned. So it starts with kind of curiosity, but almost frustration, solving a problem. You got to be passionate. If you don't have passion to do, like, I could be curious about why is my washing machine not working or why is it designed this way? But to be honest, I don't really care about washing machines. I care about people's health, wellness, and vitality. So that's my passion and that's my purpose. Autonomy is important also. If somebody's telling you what to do, hey, solve this problem, you're going to have a certain level of, juice going towards that. If you yourself are telling yourself, hey, I'm really upset with this, or I really am interested in solving this problem, you've got the autonomy. That's going to lay the foundation for success and for flow. And then finally, mastery. That's what most people, they skip this step entirely. They're like, hey, I'm curious, I'm passionate, I've got purpose, I'm autonomous. Have you spent 4 years? Have you spent 8 years? Have you spent 10 years in the industry doing your craft, honing your craft, creating a better skill set, learning from others, having a mentor? And most people, especially in this day and age, kids that are, I say kids, but folks that are under 30, 25 years old, they want it to happen like this. They want to, hey, I've been doing this.
It want to happen yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, I literally had a trainer that was griping to me and they said, I've done this and I've done that. And, I've been doing this already for 2.5 years and nothing's happened. I said, 2.5 years? I've been doing this for 32.5 years. And I'm finally in the last decade starting to get traction and figure out what I'm doing and find my lane. Now, maybe that's excessive for me. I hope it doesn't take everybody 20 years, but come on, 2.5 years is just, you're a fetus when it comes to becoming an entrepreneur. So, solve a problem and make sure you hone your skills, and learn the craft before you expect any kind of business success.
Yeah. So maybe don't try to create 10 products, maybe start with one.
Absolutely.
Especially now that based on our conversation that you just said, at least for your experience, it could potentially take almost up to a year or two to create product from conception to actually on store shelves that you could sell it to. So next question here then, what kind of suppliers should someone trying to get into this space be expecting to work with? So you said, I think you talked about like you have your manufacturing site. You're talking about, I think, a 3PL as well to store your product. What are the other key suppliers when you're developing a product, especially in the fitness space, should a new person have to know that they're going to have to deal with?
Yeah, the hardest one to find is a prototyping expert. Prototyping is a very specific niche. There's different types of skill sets. So some of my products, for instance, the Nautilus glute drive, it was more simple. All I needed was a metal fabricator, somebody that could bend and cut and weld steel. That's fairly easy. And when I say easy, you know what I'm saying? Like a lot of people, you could go, you could get online and Google, hey, metal fabricators near me. And there's probably 10 folks that'll come up and you have to go interview them and see if they're ready or
even
willing.
Facebook Marketplace, they have stuff like that.
Thank you. Exactly. That's another great option, Facebook Marketplace. So you're going to have to find somebody that can manufacture that can prototype. The challenge is, let's say it's a different type of a good, like maybe a soft good or needs a injection molding. That's a little trickier, but still there's 3D printers now that can print out a lot of stuff. I mean, it's unbelievable what these 3D printers can do. So maybe it's even a smaller, softer good. You might be able to have it 3D printed, but you got to have somebody that can help work with prototyping and then eventually computer-aided design, which is all the graphical input. And the computer-aided design isn't just making something look fancy and cool. It's literally creating a functional three-dimensional model of something. So every specification from how many millimeters wide to tall to deep, if there's recesses in there, how many millimeters are those left to right, the top to bottom, the color, the type of components that are used, all that stuff needs to be worked out. So I would say, prototyping is probably the hardest and most imperative part of the process. The website, that's not that hard. The content, even though I said it's hard, it's not that hard. You can hire videographers or learn how to do that. The 3PL, there's people you can farm out and they have multiple products that they're launching. So, get your prototyper and your mechanical engineer and your machinist. And by the way, they also are very important because there's a level of brainstorming. You're basically coming in with a napkin design, unless you're a great artist or you have some kind of computer skills. You're coming in with a graphic design and a concept, an idea. The fabricator and you need to bring this to fruition. And you have to have one of the fabricators I had worked at Lockheed Martin. For folks that don't know, Lockheed Martin is a defense contractor for the United States military. So they do high level machining and prototyping for the U.S. military and probably even NASA. And so this guy was sharp. He also was a yoga instructor. So he understood the human body. And he was one of the most unique fabricators I've worked with. I no longer live near him, but man, did I enjoy working with this guy named Michael Wolf. And he just did some tremendous brainstorming with me and helped with the process from start to finish.
Jeez, that's a lot to absorb right there. But yeah, but that's very important that you need to know because, it's, I think most people go into this thinking that they have a simple air quotes idea that they think a lot of people would like to use. And they say, oh, how hard could it be? Right. But yeah, you heard the steps that it can happen. Don't get frustrated, or sorry, don't quit on it because oh, it'll take me a year. Maybe it could be one where you find the right, all these stars align and you find it,
Right.
and maybe you can get it ready in 6 months. It's not impossible, but
Right.
we're not going to guarantee you, yes, you'll get it done in 6 months, but at least enjoy the ride because the fruits of it is probably going to be what you're going to really enjoy at the end as well.
Well, absolutely. And you brought up Bruce Lee earlier. One of my favorite quotes, Bruce Lee said, in every passionate pursuit, the pursuit counts more than the object being pursued. Now, we've all heard this in numerous, variants. It's about the journey, right? And you can't say it enough. It's not cliche. It is the 100% truth. All the experience and all the character development happens throughout the process. And by the way, if you were able to do something and launch it and it was an overnight success and it was simple, what did you learn? How could you reproduce that? Or was it just a Halley's Comet and you got lucky? It's the latter. You got lucky. I mean, it never happened. So, enjoy the process, man. It's like anything in life, whether it's a relationship, it's an interpersonal relationship. It takes time to grow and develop and evolve. There's a famous story about the life of a bamboo, and you have to Google it. This is such a great story. I can't remember the specifics, but the bamboo, the seed or the plant grows underneath the earth for I think years, like 7 years. And then all of a sudden, when it's ready to mature, it just sprouts out and it'll grow to 30 feet high in like 7 months. So it took 7 years underneath the surface. And then in 7 months, it explodes. And I just love that analogy for almost every aspect of developing yourself and actualizing your potential in life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So awesome here. So, okay, last couple of questions here before we hit to our rapid fire round here. So what is the best, I guess, billing practice for this? Should it be something when, all right, I managed to get through, let's say I did the year, my product is ready. Should I try to go straight to clients? Should I try to sell it to, let's say, a franchise or a retail shop? Maybe online retailers, or in your case, you did licensing as well. What would you suggest now with everything now? What would you recommend it to someone who has a product that's basically, like you said, 95% ready to go? Where do you think they should try to market it?
Yeah, and this is where having a mentor really helps. First of all, before you market it, you need to go through a pretty extensive testing process, which is not just for durability and reliability, but it's also for learning. Because when you launch a new product that's truly innovative, you have no clue how different people are going to respond to it. How are the instructions clear? Is it easy to use? Does it produce the outcomes you want? What if you're a 6'4" hockey player and then his wife, who's 5'4" and 100 pounds soaking wet? Are they going to both be able to use the product? All this stuff happens in testing, and you learn, do I need to tweak it? Do I need to modify it? Or are we right in the sweet spot? The other part of developing this process and going through the steps is hopefully you've talked to business consultants and talked to sales and marketing experts and e-commerce experts, and you've learned a little bit about sales and marketing. In this day and age, if you don't understand digital marketing, I mean, forget about it. Just walk away. You've got to understand how sales work now, and these email campaigns and the social media marketing and the digital, the pop-up ads and all that stuff. You need an expert in that, and they'll help guide you on how to launch it. Now, as we talked about earlier, choosing whether to license it or not, there's a litany of questions that go down, the list of how much time do you, if you're going to launch it on yourself, do you have the time, the bandwidth? Do you have the experience of all the skill sets to be a solopreneur for, let's say, 18 months to 2 years before you start to make enough money where you can bring on help and support? Or maybe do you have partners that can help fill in the gaps to your model? Do you have intellectual property? Do you have a website? Do you have money for a website? Do you have any kind of financing? Do you have an angel investor? Do you have venture capital? If, if no is the answer to most of these questions, you got to look for a licensor right away. And now that's a whole nother challenge. And that's why, again, the process is important. Over the processes of developing multiple products, guess what? You start to develop contacts. You go to trade shows. You talk to people. You start to figure out, oh, I've got this contact. I mean, my contact for Nautilus was like 6 degrees of separation. It was a buddy that launched an earlier product with me. We worked at TRX together. He became very friendly with a client that was the procurement specialist for the UFC gyms. If you're familiar with UFC gym, they now have gyms all over the world. And this guy was really good friends with the owner of Nautilus. And so it was like my buddy connected me with him. I presented, and that's when I had to have that, smoke and mirrors campaign. I mean, I had to have my product look like it was worth $1 million. I presented that to the procurement guy. Then I got his confidence and built his rapport. And he eventually said, you know what? I think you're ready. I'm going to present this to Michael Bruno, who's the owner of Star Trek and Schwinn and Stairmaster and Nautilus. And once I presented to him, he said, yeah, I think we can take this on. So, it's not a simple answer to exactly where you start, but you got to choose if you're going to be a licensee or if you're going to launch it on your own.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. That's a very good answer, actually, because, it's hard, right? Because you might have to start selling it to just regular people. Like you said, maybe hitting the trade show circuit. That might be your first thing that you might have to start considering first. But then otherwise, like you said, if you can't seem to get all these pieces, as long as the product is good enough, maybe work with a licensor. And then, like I said, I would suggest listeners reach out to Pete if you had specific licensing questions just from the high level, because he is very busy.
Sure.
But if there's something that things you should look out for in a license or a type of agreement or anything like that. But he's not a lawyer. He'll have a lawyer for that. But, hire a good lawyer. Anyways, next question here on this last one here. What is your best strategy on dealing with, I usually say difficult clients, but I guess you can talk about maybe difficult suppliers as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the strategy, you might not like this answer, the folks listening out there, find a different supplier, find a different client. And I don't mean to sound cavalier about this, but when you're dealing with somebody that's a client, let's say you're a personal trainer, just because I know you said you did some training. I'm not saying you're married to that person, but you might see them 3 days a week for an hour a pop. That's part of your time. You're making money, but that's also part of your life. And what if they're the first client of your day and that's how you start your day? And it's a negative, it's an energy vampire, right? They suck the life out of you. And, we've all had clients in business that are like this, that you just, no matter what you do, you can't really please them. They always have a crisis. They're dramatic. They're energy vampires. That sets your whole day off to a bad trajectory. And it can really make you a miserable person. And that's not who you are. So, and gosh forbid you're in bed with somebody that's a supplier that you now have to work with, like a client. At least you could potentially say, hey, Bob, I'm sorry. I no longer have this time slot available. Something came up. I'm going to have to get you paired up with another trainer. But if it's a supplier that's selling your product and you've already signed a contract and,
or providing a part for your product,
100%. So here's what you look for. Here's the simple fix is early warning signs. By the way, this is fair for any relationship. I'm recently divorced, not to get personal, but I'm recently divorced and I'm out at a gathering of my buddies the other day. And I start talking to this gal and she was kind of cute. I liked her. She seemed engaging. And then she started talking about where she met a friend and it was in rehab, which is fine. I mean, we all go through stuff, but she'd only been out of rehab like 4 months. And so to me, that's a red flag. Like, is she a great person? Probably. Is she going to fight through this? Probably. But, you got to know what you're getting into. And I see this all the time in business. I deal with somebody, they don't return an email promptly. And when I say promptly, obviously you got a day or two to return an email. But if a week goes by and you haven't heard a response, that's a red flag. That person is not efficient. They're not effective. They don't know how to communicate with you. And the whole relationship is going to, manifest itself the way it does in the first month or so of its inception. So, um, when you start seeing those early warning signs, I know it might be painful and it might be challenging and it might be a huge process, but you got to find somebody else because it's a zebra does not change its stripes.
Yes, or the one thing I can throw in that's not legal advice, make sure you have a termination of convenience clause in there. That's all I can say. Like I said, not lawyers, but think about that clause. And
Yes.
It's exactly what it says, that you can end the relationship whenever. Now, they might ask you for a fee, but that's another story. But like I said, check with your lawyer. No, that's a good thing. I know a lot of, especially service-based business, they almost like pre-screen clients, because that's almost like something you have to really, because then it is early enough that they can at least break it off really soon while everyone is still cordial.
Right.
The worst thing, like you could say, is, whether it's not getting the phone calls or not getting those emails, or the worst thing is when you dread turning on your phone or checking your emails for that one particular one that you do not want to respond to.
Right.
That's another thing you got to think of.
Right. So just don't sign any early contracts. Build a relationship. Have a once a week meeting on the phone or email correspondence. And over 4 weeks' time, you'll see trends, and you'll either go, "Wow, this person's really sharp. They're effective. I like how they communicate. They're prompt." Or you're going to have the other experience and get out early. It's just like a relationship. It gets harder and harder. All of a sudden you moved in with somebody, or you're, whatever, sharing a lease, and now it's complicated.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want that. So, all right, let's get to the rapid fire round here. I can believe it's been well over an hour already, Pete, and it's already flown by. So let's do this. Now it's more of the relaxed, more fun questions that we have here instead of all the business serious stuff that we've been talking about. Okay. Question number 1. What would the 15-year-old self be thinking you'd be doing right now?
Wait, you mean if I was actually 15? Or you mean if I had the insight from all this time?
When you were 15, what did you think you were supposed to be doing when you were a grown-up?
Oh, man, I wanted to be Bruce Lee.
There you go. Hence the shirt, people. Hence the shirt.
I missed, but I was close as I could get, I guess.
No, nice. All right, second question here. What is your guilty pleasure?
I love ice cream. I'm a fitness pro. I rarely eat it, but I can understand how sitting around watching, Monday Night Football or a good hockey game and having a tub of Ben and Jerry's ice cream is pretty addictive. So, that's it.
All right. What is your favorite martial arts movie?
Dragon, the Bruce Lee story. I know it's not authentic like Bruce Lee, but as Brandon Scott Lee, same last name. Brandon Lee's was a son. Jason Scott Lee.
Son, yes.
It did just a fantastic job, and it's a love story, and it's just a beautiful movie, and there's some great one-liners in there. If you haven't seen that movie, check it out.
Absolutely. And funny thing is, I do martial arts as well. I even did Taekwondo, black belt, when I was younger as well. Hey. So we have a lot in common there. But what was your favorite? Did you ever have a favorite, I guess, Taekwondo-ish movie?
Well, Best of the Best. It was.
That's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say tell me you haven't seen that.
Yeah, Best of the Best. Total B-rate, cheesy movie, but
who cares?
I love it.
That's when I wanted to be an American because they didn't have any Canadians. It was always South Koreans and the United States. That was basically it. So
yeah,
one of my favorites. Okay, and next question: what is the best sequel, and also what is the worst movie sequel you've seen?
Oh my gosh, the best. Well, one of the best sequels was a Batman movie, Batman Begins. It was Christian Bale. I thought that's my favorite Batman movie of all time. And so that was multiple sequels down. The worst sequel, here's funny, Meg 2. It's like a shark movie.
The shark movie?
And here's the funny thing is I haven't even seen it, but I'm already going to lay my claim that is the worst sequel because I saw the trailer. I'm like, oh, heck, I'm not seeing that.
No. Wow. I was going to say, like, for me, I'm an old school movie watcher. One of my favorite sequels that I actually enjoyed was Austin Powers 2. because I like those crazy ones like that.
course.
The worst sequel I've ever seen, Mortal Kombat. If you remember the original Mortal
gosh.
Kombat, if you saw the original Mortal Kombat back in, 95? I think that was when it came out. The first one was great. I loved it. That was the first movie I remember going to see. That was the first time I ever went to the movie theaters to watch the same movie twice. That was the first time I ever did it. I have to watch this movie again. But then when the second one came out, half the cast was already gone. I'm like, no, I can't watch it. It's horrible. But all right, last couple of questions here, and I always ask this to all my guests: if you could have a sandwich, what would be on it? What would it be called?
Oh man, here's what I like. I really like Philly cheesesteak sandwiches, but because I'm trying to be kind of healthy, I put like turkey on there, so shaved, so exactly the same thing like a Philly cheesesteak, but with shaved like organic turkey. That's a good sandwich.
What kind of bun?
Definitely like a hoagie, the hoagie kind of fried on there or panini on there. I don't know.
Well, and what would you call it?
Bushido.
The Bushido.
The Bushido roll.
Love it. Bushido roll. Put a name on it. You know who has trouble with that particular question that I ask all my guests? Chefs. The minute I ask them
they got to get fancy, right?
Well, you know what they really stress out about is cereal a soup. Why or why not? Right? Because then that to us it's like, well, cereal, I guess. I don't even consider it soup, but you could make the case that because one chef said, well, no, because soup is cold. And then they're like, oh, wait a minute. I know like 20 cold soups.
Wow.
So is that really so?
Right.
They got to this. I can see their mind spinning. Right? And I'm not trying to ask thought-provoking, deep philosophical questions. It's more like, is cereal a soup? That's all it was. But you'll be surprised what that is. All right. So we got the Bushido roll. Gotta love it. All right. Last question here. What is your theme song and why? So
man,
you're walking down the street, that song hits, people know that Pete's coming.
It's got to be the Rocky One theme song, dun 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 dun. I mean, it's orchestral. What I love about Rocky, if you haven't seen, do yourself a favor and watch Rocky and it's Sylvester Stallone's first ever. He produced the movie, play, and he starred as lead. And the interesting thing about that movie, somebody offered him $150,000. This is the lead role. So he said, I'm not going to take this company until I get it. And it so the theme song there.
Wow, that's great. Any other last piece of advice that you would entrepreneur, any business, final thoughts for them? I'm going to
final Bruce Lee quote. It said, empty your mind, shapeless like water. You put water into a cup. You put it into a bottle. Put it into a teapot. It becomes. Now water can flow. Water can crash. Yosa. Be water, my friend. And what he was talking about is just being adaptable. Like in any situation, be that willow tree that flows in the wind, no matter how stiff the wind is, instead of being brittle and breaking. So adapt, be like water, my friend.
Wow, that's great. So that's a great final way to finish it off. So where can people find you? How can they reach out to you, Pete?
Well, I'm at Pete Holman 1, the number 1, Holman, Pete Holman 1 on Instagram and Twitter, is it Threads now?
X.
And I'm at X. Yeah, sorry, man. See what I'm saying about social media? How hard it is. And then I'm at Pete Holman on Facebook. I've got a couple different channels there. But yeah, I'm also at ph1performance.com. All my information is at ph1performance.com. And you can learn a little bit more about me on that website.
All right, Pete, it was awesome to have you on the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks, brother. All the best.
Hey, you, do you need a voiceover? Well, look no farther. Northway Capital Group has your answer. Commercials and explainer videos, AVR and voicemail, health and wellness, corporate training and e-learning, announcements, documentaries, and biography. Contact us on social media or email us at northwaycapitalgroup@gmail.com. Thank Thank you for listening to the SME Stories podcast, which is owned by Northway Capital Group. Please follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Northway Capital Group.